look at any successful cricket team.
Yeah.
They have a good mix of people. You have the right kind of batsmen, you have the right kind of
Yeah.
bowlers. More importantly, you have people who can play in a particular situation,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's why it's very important as an organization to have the right kind of mix of people. You got to constantly innovate. You got to constantly think differently, think out of the box, and make sure that you learn from your surroundings. I think personalization is the key when it
Yeah.
comes to connecting with people, especially down the line.
Here we go.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Jify Connect Podcast. My name is Anisha Dosa, and I'll be your host for today. It gives me great pleasure in welcoming Conrad Alves. Conrad is an experienced HR leader who's had many leadership positions across leading organizations. He is the HR head at Travel Food Services. He's also held many leadership positions across Mahindra Group, Tata Group, as well as Landmark Group. He's here today to share a lot about his rich experiences in people management. More importantly, in the short period of time that I've known him, I've had the pleasure of having insight into his organization, where I've seen some great HR practices in a sector that's very frontline heavy and hence has a lot of challenges inherently. So I'm very excited for you all to meet Conrad and listen to him the way I have. So Conrad, thank you so much for coming here. I would love to start with a little bit about your journey and your background and what really attracted you to the field of HR. How did you start and really what keeps you motivated?
So, not too many people know this, but HR actually happened by accident. I was a search consultant for 5 years, did a lot of business development, search assignments, and I think I was very naturally attracted to people. I liked dealing with people, and I always felt I was a people's person. And that's how it happened. And eventually I got into HR, and I think 20 years down the line, here I am.
Awesome. So you started a really long time ago. The people function itself has obviously evolved significantly. You see lines blurring today between business CXO roles and the HR function. When you started off, did you have like a career map in mind with regard to where you wanted to be from a people function standpoint? Did you ever considering maybe looking at the business side of things? How did the career path as a people function leader evolve for you?
So I think in the last 2 decades, the people function has seen a lot of change. Okay, back then we never were given a chance to be on the table, and I think that came because there was a perception that a lot of HR leaders, a lot of people leaders lacked business exposure. We did not have business acumen. Yeah. But I think over the last 2 decades, all of us in the people function have put in a lot of effort to understand business, to partner with business. And in fact, the business has now accepted us and we have earned a seat on the table.
Do you feel that over a period of your career, there was a proactiveness from your end in participating in the business function in some shape or form, or ensuring that the cohesiveness of the two departments was there in the organizations that you were working in, or is that sort of something that you saw happen organically?
No, so that's something that I think it is up to every people leader to make that happen.
Yeah.
Talking about my experience, I think over the last couple of years, and even when I started my career, I had a lot of interest in understanding the business. All decisions, all interventions, policies, etc. were always proposed in line with the business.
Yeah.
There were decisions based on numbers. There was data presented, and I think every initiative was backed with numbers and how it could actually impact and benefit the business. And I think was there an attempt from organizations to include HR in every decision? Yes, but not always. And I'm sure it's fair to say that we all had to fight and, in fact, earn a seat on the table.
Conrad, you've had an exemplary career, right? Like many leadership roles in many large companies, where in many cases HR is a very, very important part of those organizations. What did you do to kind of help you progress in your career? What were some of the things that you feel worked for you that allowed you to get the opportunities that you did? And how did you make certain decisions along the way that allowed you to even move from organizations into bigger organizations over a period of time through positions as well?
So I think one of the biggest challenge that any person faces, irrespective of the function, he's afraid of change.
Yeah.
Right. Now there are two things. I think change comes very naturally. It's always happening around you. You may not see it until it hits you, right? And I think the golden rule is that you got to be willing to embrace change. I think that's one. The second part is when you embrace change, you face with another challenge, and that's dealing with ambiguity.
Yeah.
Today, we all live in a VUCA world, right? And dealing with situations which are uncertain. You had, now have the aftermath of COVID, right? We have to all deal with. And I think dealing with ambiguity is today one of the most important and critical competencies for every successful leader.
Yeah.
So I think these two pieces, made me realize that I had to take roles which were more challenging. I had to take certain risks. Every job that I took, new job that I took, was always in a different sector and a different industry.
Yeah.
So in a span of close to 2 decades, I've seen 6 sectors.
Yeah.
And I think that adds a lot of length and breadth and brings a whole new perspective on the way you manage people.
And that's obviously very important, right? Because today you're at the forefront of an organization which is very people intensive, right? And retention tends to be issues in most of the sectors that you've worked with, right? Whether it's in retail or whether it's in QSR management, like keeping the frontline happy is perhaps the most challenging thing any HR leader has to do. I'd like to understand a little bit about, how do you kind of address some of, or take your people through some of the most challenging periods in an organization, but also given it's an existing problem at hand, right? So retention in the frontline heavy sectors is a problem at hand. Taking them through a challenging period like COVID, which is something that you have been through, what are the kind of value systems or processes or initiatives that you implement to actually help people through these times?
Right. As you rightly said, engaging frontline staff is very, very important.
Yeah.
Jobs at the front end are very monotonous. They keep doing the same thing day in and day out. You got to keep them motivated by having various initiatives. We at Travel Food Services have a lot of initiatives on wellness, right? All kinds of wellness. We have Fun Fridays, we have Wellness Wednesdays. We have a lot of employee-friendly policies. We make sure that we make them feel important, right? Small moments. Each birthday is celebrated, right? We have a prominent program called Star Yaar Kalakar, wherein we actually kind of appreciate each month, the little deeds that they do. The idea is, what different can you offer somebody in a job which is very indifferent? So I think the trick lies in ensuring that you stay as connected as possible to people, and can you offer something which is much more than just money, right?
Yeah.
So I think it all boils down to that.
Have you seen initiatives that you have done, any initiatives that have stood out over the other, or do you feel like it's a combination of initiatives over a period of time that's important to the workforce?
I think it's a combination of several initiatives, but one thing that stands out in all our initiatives is the personal touch.
Okay.
So whatever we do, be it wellness, we try and connect with the employee.
Okay.
And we try and make sure that we leave a personal touch. So everything is about personalization. So if you're giving a gift, it's about personalization. You mentioned the name. You try and make the person feel important. Make the person feel that you're giving something that is for him, and it's not something in generic. So I think personalization is the key when it comes to connecting with people, especially down the line.
That's super interesting, actually. I can see how that can be effective in the front line. I'm going to come back a little bit to a high pressure environment, right? Like I think recently quite inspired by the T20 World Cup, where we really saw very high pressure environment, right? And we saw teams succeed, but it took a team to succeed with good leadership, right? If I had to kind of juxtapose that scenario onto yours, right? You went through a very similar high pressure period, as did most businesses, but yours was directly impacted at the time of COVID, right? What do you think in that high pressure environment worked effectively, both from a leadership standpoint, but also as a people function? What did you all have to really do to kind of keep that team motivated, kind of really hold the front over there, right? For lack of a better word. And where was the role of leadership, right? And across functions? I would kind of love to understand the approach in a high pressure environment like that.
Right. So I think two pieces. One was resilience.
Yeah.
Right. And that was very important. And I think every leader in the organization reflected that. Right?
Yeah.
And given the fact that we did it, so did our teams.
Yeah.
Right? The second most important thing is I think we were lucky as an organization to have the right mix of people. And you mentioned a high pressure situation. You mentioned the cricket team.
Yeah.
Look at any successful cricket team.
Yeah.
Okay. The team, they have a good mix of people. You have the right kind of batsmen. You have the right kind of bowlers. More importantly, you have people who can play in a particular situation.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's why it's very important as an organization to have the right kind of mix of people. Right. And I think coupled with resilience, we were able to come out of the storm.
Would love to understand, Conrad, a little bit around how to have a very effective communication strategy, right? And I say this not very faint-heartedly, right? When it comes to, let's say, a tech company where it's pretty much everyone sitting in offices like this and, speaking similar languages, much easier to communicate and have like town halls. Everybody understands the same language. Everybody's largely on the same kind of wavelength in regard to how they view the world, right? When it comes to frontline-heavy companies, you're talking about pan-India presence, different cultural elements, different values and priorities, and also complexity that goes with managing frontline workforce. And I keep saying this because I know how big an issue it is today. And I see all our clients across the board just trying to solve that one piece. What do you do to keep them motivated? And how do you effectively communicate with such a diverse workforce, right? I think would love to understand any tactical experiences where you felt that this actually worked and also where maybe it didn't work.
So as you rightly said, communication is the key.
Yeah.
And what happens is when it comes to frontline workforce, you need to, in fact, at times over-communicate.
Yeah.
Right? And we have various mediums which we use, okay? Formal mediums, informal mediums. We sometimes still use the old-fashioned way, like town halls are the best. Right? It could be a town hall once in a month. We have daily briefings, right? Wherein the manager connects with the staff, talks to them, right? You have HR connects, which happen on a periodic basis. Given that, we also make sure that you use traditional methods like notice boards. But I think more importantly is more than technology. I'm coming back to again, the point that I use, it's about personalization.
Yeah.
So there's nothing like, probably catching up with people or having a small event wherein the manager actually gets a chance to talk to somebody, because having so many people, it's very tough to, connect with people on a one-on-one basis, again, on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But many a times we do find opportunities to create a formal environment wherein people get a chance to speak and share and discuss, right? We also have various initiatives wherein people can share in their ideas, and many a times we do appreciate those ideas which have come down the line, and that also gives people an impression that yes, they are being heard.
Okay. And that's typically like a open town hall where people can share their feedback or ideas that they have on the...
Absolutely.
Interesting. How does one still, so completely take away the points with regard to effective communication? And it seems like it's a very, very effective process that one needs to run to make sure communication has a cadence and has the right language and how you're communicating to it. But how do you keep people motivated whose job is fairly monotonous, right? There's only so much growth that one can achieve. Of course, there are obviously a percentage of that pool that grow significantly and have leadership positions overall eventually. How do you keep motivation high?
So I think I'll answer that question slightly differently.
Sure.
we spoke about communication, we spoke about personalization. I think it all boils down to the culture of the organization.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can create that culture wherein people feel like coming to work every day, if you can create that culture wherein people know that you're being heard, right? People will be motivated, right?
Okay.
It's not about just doing the job, right? A lot of our colleagues down the line today have the opportunity to work with the best.
Yeah.
When you work in an airport environment, you on a daily basis you may interact with people from both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
At one end you could be interacting with a student, at the other end you could be interacting with a cricketer or an actor, right? So you got to learn you got to show the same amount of energy. So if you meet with a cricketer and you say, hey, how, wow, and show that kind of energy, you got to make sure that even when you're meeting a student, you show the same kind of energy, right? So for a guest, every welcome has to be a warm welcome.
Yeah.
And I think it's the culture of the organization that brings in the element of motivation, while it may sound very cliche, but it's a fact at times. And we at TFS always ensure that we build a people-centric culture wherein everyone is out to go there and given their best.
Yeah. Where do you think organizations fail to do it right? And I'm talking specifically on sectors which are frontline heavy, right? Like retail, large distribution businesses, QSR, F&B. Where have you seen in your vast exposure to the industry or in your experience where there are certain things that organizations do that are big mistakes and that they should use? There's a playbook to avoid that. Right. Any learnings around where you find that this is something that I've seen is a formula for failure?
Right. So the answer is the devil is always in the detail.
Okay.
Right. And in any organization which has scale and which is very people-centric, the devil is in the detail. But I think the answer is that all managers and people in the organization need to be hands-on.
Yeah.
So you got to have a hands-on approach. If there's a problem, many a times we have this tendency to lean on technology and find the answer through analytics. But I think the secret lies is getting on the ground and actually understanding what's happening over there, right? And unless you have a hands-on approach, right? If you are catering to an audience, okay, which is serving X number of people every day or few hundreds of people every day, unless you actually go there, stand beside him, you won't understand what he's going through. And many a times as leaders, we tend to sit in our offices and think that we know everything.
Yeah.
But when you go out on the ground, the reality is very, very different.
Yeah. Yeah. So as a leader of a people function, how important is it to constantly stay on top of competition, to analyze strategies that competition is employing and effectively use or react constructively in your own organization with these competitive strategies? Is this part of your day-to-day? Is this very, very critical? Or do you believe that you find that one core moat from a culture standpoint and just commit to that, right? How have you kind of seen your thought process evolve on that front?
So I think it's very important to know what's happening around you.
Okay.
And you should always know who your competitor is. I firmly believe that you should never underestimate your competitor. But at the same time, I don't think one should be intimidated by what's happening with competition. I think innovation is the key. So whilst you go about doing your business, you got to constantly innovate. You got to constantly think differently, think out of the box, and make sure that you learn from your surroundings, right? Given that many a times people tend to see competition with a very, very different eye, right? But I think as leaders of any successful business and within the business itself, it's important to be aware about competition, but it's more important to stay on track and not lose sight of your vision.
And do you find that this is something that over a period of time, because you've worked with so many diverse businesses, has your thought process around this evolved, right? Was there a period in your career where you were potentially like quite on top of, okay, this is the people strategy that they've initiated, we're losing people to, let's say, competition, let us maybe tweak something? Have you gone through the cycles of that phase as an individual?
Yes.
Because obviously that spans across companies. Or would you say that you've largely been more core to the culture being built within?
No, I think I agree. And the world has evolved in the last couple of years. I think 10 years ago, we weren't as open as competitors.
Yeah.
Today, there's no harm in sharing data.
Yeah.
I think even competitors come together for a coffee. We share about what we're doing. We share best practices. And I think the world has changed. But I think more importantly, one has also realized that the same strokes can't be used for the same folks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you got to use different strokes for different folks.
Okay.
And no matter what you learn from your competitors, you got to be original with your people. You got to do something different. And more importantly, you got to keep your organization culture in mind whilst doing so.
If you had one piece of advice to give people who are hoping to be future leaders within the HR space as people function leaders, what would be some of those points that you would advise a younger self, right, or a younger person coming into this fold?
So I think being a people leader, one is you got to be a very good listener.
Yeah.
Second is you got to believe in yourself. The third most important piece is that you got to always think about creating a balance between the organization and people. Many a times people leaders lean towards either the organization or individuals.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. But I think a good people leader is always able to strike that right balance between people and the organization and create a win-win situation.
Okay, Conrad, thank you so much for sharing your insights. That was very informative, but also great fun.
Thank you.
We're now moving on to the rapid fire round. So a little bit of fun in the podcast. Are you ready?
Sure.
Great. What is the top quality you look for when you're interviewing candidates?
Integrity.
Favorite way to unwind after work?
Music.
Okay. Best career advice you've ever received?
Be yourself.
All right. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Superman.
Okay. First thing that comes to your mind when we say HR in 2030 will be?
Work from home.
Don't we all wish that? Biggest challenge in your professional life today?
Being myself.
Okay. Interesting. Maintaining work-life balance. I love this one. A myth, a choice, impossible, a challenge.
A challenge.
Okay. Recommend one company that you believe has built a strong culture and it's truly a moat for their business today.
Travel Food Services, TFS.
Not biased at all.
Absolutely not.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Conrad. This has really been a pleasure. Thank you for taking time out and thank you for talking to our podcast viewers. This was a very interesting and informative session.
Thank you so much and I wish you all the best.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.